tell me I look frightful.
Good morning, and welcome to Understanding Trauma and Building Resilience. My name is Karen Laird. I am the training coordinator for the Office of the Victim Advocate. I've been with the office about 18 and a half years, and have for the last about year and a half fell into the role of training coordinator. So it is a pleasure to be here with all of you, at least virtually. And I'd like to introduce my co-presenter, J.R. Waltemeyer.
Good morning, everybody. My government name is Gerald. That's why you see it up there. I have never known that name. I've always been JR. I've done victim services here in Pennsylvania for, I want to tell you, roughly about 19 years. I spent somewhere in the ballpark of 10 to 12 years in my local district attorney's office. And that's been followed up now by almost 9 years here at the state level at the OVA. I'm currently the manager of the Address Confidentiality Program. Ironically, part of the reason I'm before you today is I also have a degree in social studies education, and I was a teacher down in Baltimore, Maryland for about 10 years in between stints of doing victim witness work in New York. So I'm very happy to be here with you today. As Karen said, we're very pleased to be in front of you, even if it's virtually, and just very grateful that you're taking time out of your day to spend it with us here this morning. Thanks.
Absolutely. One thing that I do want to say is JR and I are very casual presenters. So if anyone has any questions throughout our presentation, please feel free to put them in the chat and they will let us know what they are. But please, anything that you want to ask, please feel free to do so. Our course objectives today, we're going to talk about stress. And we're going to talk about stress in both our clients and other professionals, as well as yourself. I mean, let's be honest. There's not anyone in our field that doesn't know about trauma and doesn't know about stress. And we all claim to be experts in it, although we all are pretty terrible at taking our own advice and taking the advice that we give to our clients sometimes. So we're just kind of rein it back in and just remind ourselves that when you do this work and when we're working with clients, that it's great to take care of our clients, but it's imperative that we also take care of ourselves. So we're gonna talk about some different kind of stress. We're gonna talk about ways to address stress and trauma through progressive muscle relaxation, and we're just gonna talk about different ways that you can, really address stress when you're in places. Not all the time do we get stressed when we're at home and we're free to meditate or do certain things. Sometimes you're in the office when stress occurs. So you need to be able to take a couple seconds, a couple minutes and practice some techniques that can help you in that moment. So those are kind of some of the things that we're going to share today.
So, I want to reinforce something that Karen said. We're not here to teach you anything groundbreaking or something that you probably haven't been exposed to or don't know. I think that the real reason we're here today is because we're terrible at this. We are victim service providers. We're terrible at this. We're great at telling other people they got to take care of themselves. But being fixers, being caring individuals, being empaths, we have a great tendency to forget about ourselves. And so we're here today, Karen and I are here today to make you a little more mindful of that. And that brings us to the first step on our journey. We want to make sure that not only today during this session, but throughout your time at Pathways and even beyond, that we are exercising more mindfulness. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. We're going to practice it a little bit today, but only a little bit, promise. Okay? So I know you can read. I'm not going to read the definition to you. What I want you to understand is that mindfulness is simply about being present. That's it. It's nothing more difficult than that. We need to be more present, not only at our jobs, but more importantly, sometimes at home. And I think that that's one of the reasons that Karen and I like to begin with this, because the more mindful we are as we move forward today in this training, the more we're going to soak this in and the more that we're going to start practicing what we preach, right? Okay, so today, one of the things that I want you to start working on with me and Karen is going to be focusing and some selective attention, okay? And please understand that there's a method to our madness. I'll explain everything by the time we're finished, I promise, okay? So what I want you to do right now is I want you to get comfortable. If at all possible, I want you to be seated. If possible, if really possible, I'd love for you to be seated on the floor. This is the best way to do this, is sitting on the floor. But the beautiful part about mindfulness is that it can be done anywhere, pretty much at any time. And I think it's good practice for us pretty much any time. So what I want to show you today is going to be the connection between mindfulness and eating. In a perfect world, if we were all together, the first thing that we would do when we start this training is I usually start this with a great big bag of Hershey's chocolates. Being a hometown boy, growing up within 20 minutes of Hershey, nice to spread the word about Hershey, and who doesn't love sharing chocolate with somebody else, right? So the reason I use chocolate is it's impossible to not be mindful when you have chocolate in your mouth for most of us, okay? And the best part is once you go through this the first time by yourself, the idea of using this with a client who's experienced trauma recently is intuitive. It makes so much sense. So let's talk about mindfulness and eating. The greater majority of us, we shove food in our mouths because, let's face it, we got to go to the next task. We don't have a chance to enjoy what we're eating. We don't even think about what we're eating. In my old college days, our coaches always referred to it as fueling the machine. They didn't care what we ate. They just wanted us to eat large quantities of it because we were, workouts, we were burning through 4,000 or 5,000 calories a workout. And so you got to replenish fuel. But that is the opposite of what I want us doing here today and in practicing this exercise, which I hope you do. So the first thing that I would have you do is if you have any food with you, that's great. If not, I want you to think about this activity in your mind and think about how it would be applied to a client who is perhaps stepping off the witness stand for the first time. If you have chocolate with you or you have anything at all to eat, I want you to unwrap it. I want you to take it out of its container. I want you to first of all look at it. How many times do we look at our food before we shove it in our mouths? Usually only if we pay a lot for it, right? But I want you to begin practicing that. Take a look. What does this texture look like? Does it look soft? Does it look like silk? Does it look hard? Does it look rough? Embrace it with your eyes. I want you to take a big sniff of it. Smell it. Now, those of you who are imagining like I am chocolate right now, you can smell the chocolate in your brain even if you don't have any. Because we all know that that's one of the best parts of the chocolate experience. After you've gotten the smell in your nostrils and you've enjoyed it and you've experienced a memory or two with regards to the smell of chocolate, I want you to touch it. I want you to feel it. Now, don't get all messy. We're not trying to have chocolate smears all over the walls like we're 5-year-olds after Easter. But what I do want is I want for you to be able to tell me what it feels like, or at least be able to answer for yourself. What does that chocolate feel like? Is it soft? Is it grainy? And then finally, the moment that we all been waiting for. You put the chocolate in your mouth. Don't chew it right away. Run your tongue over it. Feel it with your tongue. Feel as it starts to dissolve, the difference in textures. How does it feel on your tongue or the roof of your mouth or even on your teeth? The taste. What parts of your tongue does it excite when you taste it? Can you smell it? Does the smell get more intense when you're tasting? Bringing the 5 senses together in something as simple as chocolate or music, it has a great effect, particularly for clients, but also for us. If you were just eating chocolate with me there a moment ago, first of all, kudos to you. I'm a little jealous. Second of all, most of you were transported back in time somewhere by that chocolate. We all have a distinct memory about it. The best part for me about being mindful of eating something as simple as a bar of chocolate or a piece of chocolate is that it can take us and, most importantly, our clients from that trip down memory lane that they were just on while testifying. perhaps about an assault, perhaps about a sexual assault. And we can bring them into the present. You know, a big part of testifying, we need them to go back into the moment. We want them to experience this in front of the jury. Not because we like torturing people, but because we need the jury to understand what the client went through in order to be able to hold the offender accountable to the fullest degree of the law. And so we purposefully take the client back in time to that horrible moment or those horrible moments. That event when they come off the stand sharing a piece of chocolate, I've even done it with a breath mint or a piece of gum if that's all I had. It has a great effect of bringing us from the past into the present. We stop walking down memory lane. We start walking down the hallway that we're on today. And I think it can really start the process of being able to understand the testimony you just provided as a witness or as a victim. And for us as individuals, it can take us out of that moment that we all have during the day. Frustration, demands of clients, the demands of our bosses, the demands of our families. And it places us, even if it's just for 1 minute, solely into the grip of chocolate. As we proceed today, I realize that Karen and I are not chocolate. And I know you're not going to enjoy us the same way that you would enjoy Hershey. But what I want you to do is be mindful. Try to fully immerse yourself in what we're talking about and the experiences we provide you today so that you are best able to process them and apply them in your professional and personal lives. Thank you for those moments.
Okay, thank you, JR. So now that we are a bit mindful and we are able to absorb information that we're going to get, let's talk about stress. And I think stress is something that it's a word we throw around a lot. Oh, I'm stressed. I had a stressful day. But what does that really mean? You know, and what the different types of stress mean. You know, there's acute stress, and we all have acute stress. You know, maybe you're driving to work in the morning and there's an accident. And so you're delayed getting to work. And then you get to work and you're all frazzled because your morning just didn't happen the way it should have happened. Or you wake up in the morning and you don't have any power. You know, your power went out in the middle of the night and you get up and you're frantically scurrying around and your morning routine is just a bit jolted. You know, or you can have episodic acute stress. So this is something that happens frequently. So maybe, you know, I'm assuming most of us live in Pennsylvania and, you know, there's road work happening, you know, 365 days a year, regardless of where you live or what roads you take. And so say they shut down your main route to work and it's going to be shut down for the next 6 months, which means you have to find an alternate route to get to work. That causes stress. Even if you're prepared for it, that causes you stress. In the morning, trying to get where you need to go, after work is done, when you're trying to get home, because we all have responsibilities, it causes stress. Your clients may have similar stresses. They may, as JR said when he talked about a client testifying, think about how many times clients have to go to court and think about how often sometimes they don't have a ride and they have to figure out, how am I going to get back and forth to court? Or how am I going to get back and forth to my counseling appointments because I have no means to get there? So sometimes they endure that stress. And then we have chronic stress. You know, chronic stress is long-term stress. Some things with chronic stress, for those of you that have children, chronic stress could be, I have a teenage daughter and another almost teenage daughter. That can be chronic stress because there's hormones living all around my house 24 hours a day. But that chronic stress is something that just wears you down day after day. It could be somebody in your family has an illness. It could be you have a marriage that isn't doing well. It can be something as, you know, you're not happy with your job at the moment. It could be that you're having financial troubles. Those are all things that weigh you down day after day after day. And if you don't start to take care of yourself, you really feel the effects of those. And then you have traumatic stress. Sometimes there's an event that causes, that just intense, and intense stress is, I think, what traumatic stress really, really kind of amplifies. Think of the people that had to endure 9/11, the people in the towers, the people on the airplanes. Think about school shootings. Think about anything, even for a victim, think about the moment that they were victimized. That traumatic stress stays with them. And so understanding that stress can be as simple as I was a couple minutes late to work because there was an accident on the road and I couldn't get there on time, to as traumatic as I was involved in a mass shooting. And now every day when I wake up, that's all I think about. So I think understanding the different kinds of stress and understanding that we all experience stress in our everyday world, in our professional world. And a lot of times those stresses coincide with each other. I mean, how often do you have a rough start to your day for whatever the case may be, and you get to work and you're already frazzled, and then 365 other problems arise when you're at work. So you've already started your day frazzled, and then work just piles on, because the work that we do, unfortunately, just doesn't stop. It doesn't care that we had a rough morning. It doesn't care that, we had a stressful weekend or whatever the case may be. Work in human services, whether you're victim services, whether you're a victim advocate, whether you're in law enforcement, it's constant. And so it doesn't always give us time to kind of rebalance ourselves before we jump right into the stressful work that we all do. So let's talk a little bit about some common symptoms of stress. Some of these are going to be no secret to anyone. Constant worrying or obsessive thinking, right? We all do that. We all worry, especially when we're stressed. We tend to worry even more. Prolonged periods of poor sleep. I don't know about any of you, but that's how I can tell that I'm stressed, is I don't sleep well. I either can't fall asleep, or I fall asleep and I'm up and down pretty much all night, getting very little, consistent sleep. Regular and severe headaches. And I know that some people can say, oh, well, I have allergies, so my headache's due to allergies, or my allergies due to hormones, or my allergies due to it's raining outside and the barometric pressure. Sometimes your headache isn't any of those things. Sometimes it's just caused by stress. Unexplained weight loss or weight gain. As JR said with eating, we tend to be very busy, so we just shove food in our mouth. Either we don't eat at all because we're so busy and we're constantly running, or we don't have time to be mindful of what we're eating and make healthy choices. So we're grabbing whatever is convenient, which is always not the most healthy, and shoving it in our mouths just to add fuel so we can keep running. Again, not always the best choices. Constant anger or irritability. That's a big one. Being short with everyone, being short with your significant other, being short with your children, being short with your coworkers, just very short fused. Whether you've always been like that or not, it's amplified. And the inability to concentrate. You sit down and you're trying to complete a task and your mind is everywhere but trying to complete that task. And we all know these symptoms. These aren't anything new. But sometimes what you want to think about, so say you're a supervisor and say you notice that one of your staff is all of a sudden late for work all the time. Maybe they've never been before. Maybe they're calling out a lot all of a sudden. And things as a supervisor where you might say, oh my gosh, this person's just not giving effort. Is it that they're just not giving effort, or is it that they're under some kind of stress and they're really struggling right now? I think sometimes we overlook signs and symptoms in ourselves. We also overlook signs and symptoms in our coworkers, in our staff, in our friends. We're quick to blame, but we're not quick to understand why is their mood changing? Why are their routines changing? What's happening? Again, I think that we live in a society that's very fast paced. So, you get up, you run, you go to sleep, and then you get up the next day and do the same thing over and over again. And so a lot of symptoms of stress have been there for a long time. And had they been caught early on, might not, that acute stress might not have ever led to chronic stress, but because they're left kind of really undiagnosed and we just kind of push it to the back burner, it builds and it builds and it builds and it builds to a point then where not only are we unhealthy, but when we are unhealthy, we can't provide services to the clients that are also struggling and are also, had just come out of a traumatic experience. I always give that advice to actually, I'm a mother, so I always give that advice to other mothers. You can't be a good mother if you don't take care of yourself. And that was a really hard lesson for me to learn. I wanted to be super mom, but I also realized that sometimes I just have to have some time to myself to recharge and do something for myself. And when I do that, I'm a better wife. I'm a better mother. I'm a better worker. I'm a better friend. I'm just better all around. It's not selfish to take time for yourself. In fact, it's imperative.
Can you go back one slide, please?
You're asking a lot, JR, but yeah.
So I want you to just soak this in, the common symptoms of stress, and think about what Karen said. How often is it in our own professional lives, our own personal lives, do we see the symptoms in other people? And rather than being mindful, trying to gain a better understanding as to why they're exhibiting these symptoms, we write it off with a quick label. What a bitch. What a jerk he is. Part of mindfulness is being mindful of these symptoms in other people, in our clients, and our coworkers, and our families, and ourselves. And when you become mindful of them, the next step, of course, is to do something about them. So one of the things we wanted to take a look at here with you today is going to be, what are some of the ways that we cope with stress? Now, when we're together, Karen and I would ask you to fill in the blanks here. How are some of the most common ways that we fill in stress? And here's the funny thing. There's a couple of you right now with smiles on your faces, kind of chuckling to yourselves. Because you know the same things that Karen and I know, that's that a lot of us use unhealthy things to cope with stress. We drink too much. We eat too much. We practice other not so safe behaviors. Might indulge in drugs. Sometimes we have difficulties with relationships. All of these ways that we cope with stress that tend to be unhealthy, we all know them really well, and they make us laugh. And the reason they make us laugh is because even though we know what they are, we're still going to use them because they're easy. Okay. So one of the things that we wanted to look at today with you was how to redeploy. What are some of the more healthy ways to cope with stress? Now, don't get me wrong. After a really stressful day, there is nothing better for me. And I've never been in recovery, knock on wood, but there's nothing better than going home for a pint of beer or a glass of red wine. Sit and talk to my wife about my day and just kind of let the day ease off of me. But when you notice those things occur on a regular basis, of course we have a problem. When you notice that that's your go-to and you don't have other methods of coping, again, that's when we see problems. This is one of the reasons that I encourage mindfulness. You got to be mindful of these things in yourself. And when you see that you're not sleeping enough, don't just say, well, I'm not sleeping enough. Ask yourself why. Be mindful of why. Are you having those repetitive, intrusive thoughts all night long? Do you internalize your anxiety and allow it to make you sick in the stomach, like maybe I did last night? Do you push away the people that you care about? Be mindful. And start asking yourself, are those things beneficial? Do they help me cope? Or are they simply the way that I cope because it's what I was originally taught or what I originally learned or the only thing I know? Be mindful. Rebalance. Boundaries, man. We all know this. We don't practice this at all. Particularly, I'm going to go out on a limb and say with COVID. I mean, we're still working remotely a number of days. And even though as a state employee, I'm required to work 7.5 hours during the day, I don't think I've worked a 7.5 hour day since I started work at OVA. Now that I'm at home, it's much more difficult to just walk away. I mean, I'm only at home 3 days a week, which I'm very thankful for. And it does allow me to have my family and my dog nearby, at least sometimes, which I think is a really good way for me to cope with my stress. But you have to understand that it's much more difficult to have that balance between home and work life when they both occur in the same place. It's something I've struggled with. I'm not going to lie. I've tried to really reinforce that boundary for myself and being mindful when I'm not being fair to myself and I'm donating 3-4 hours a night to the state. Okay? So be mindful. Connect with supportive people. We in victim services, we are supportive to our clients. I'm going to encourage you to practice that same mindfulness, that same supportiveness with the people that you love the most in your employment, the people you work with. Make sure that we're being supportive and not just commiserating. Commiserating is fun and fine and good. But in the end, does it add to the stress or does it take away from the stress? And that venting might take away in the beginning. But once we keep rehashing that same path, that same repetitive pattern of behavior, that same repetitive thought, it no longer is healthy. So be mindful. Practice mindfulness. Get sleep. Turn your phone off an hour before bed. Exercise. I've already stressed this about 1,000 times over. I'm going to make you take a look at my socks today. There's a reason. Trust me. If you take a look at my socks, let me just make sure you can see them. There we go. Okay. You see that? That is my little buddy Astro. He is our dog, our family dog. He is a Alaskan Malamute German Shepherd. My wife this year found a place that made socks out of your pictures. So she got us all socks made with Astro's pictures because he's such a big part of our life. Bond with your pet. I have a particularly difficult client, a particularly difficult phone call, and I'm working remotely. Okay, I'm on break for 15 minutes. Astro, it's time to go outside, buddy. Let's go out and throw the ball. Let's go out and roll in the grass, whatever I need to do, whatever you need to do, bud. Definitely a great way to cope with stress. Okay? So find those things that work for you. Practice them. Practice them.
JR, can I say one thing?
Of course, Karen, always.
One thing too that I think as workers, as victim service advocates that we fail to do is to take that time during the day. For whatever reason, we think that it is a sign of weakness that if we get off the phone and it's a bad call or we have a moment with a client and it's really stressful, that we can't take 10 minutes to rebalance ourselves. And again, if we're not okay, we're not going to be able to service the people that we need to service in an okay manner. So if you do get off the phone and it's a rough phone call, walk away from your desk. Even if you just go get a drink, refill your coffee, take a quick walk around the office building. It doesn't have to be anything lengthy, but remove yourself from that. Take a couple deep breaths and don't just jump right back into the next thing before you've settled the stress that you just endured. Because that's when it builds and builds and builds. And that's when then we are unable to do our job the way we should be able to do our job because we're not okay. So I don't think there's any supervisor in this world that's going to not allow you those couple minutes to rebalance yourself so that the next phone call that you take or the next client that you interact with, you can give them 100% of yourself. Absolutely right, Karen. Thank you for that great point. One of the ones that I want to point out here in terms of ways to cope, and one of the ways that I use most often, is the next to the last one in the far right column, and that's practice meditation, stress reduction, and yoga. Very blessed here at OVA. I will tell you that one of my colleagues, when we're all together here, one of my colleagues, Nicole Evans, is a yoga instructor, and she graciously donates
time almost every single week to the staff when we're all together to provide yoga to anybody who wants to do it. We're allowed to take our lunch and practice yoga during a couple of days a week. I love it. I think that it allows me not only the freedom to do my job as good as possible, but it also allows me to be the best dad and husband possible when I get home, because I've kind of eased some of that stress off before I've gotten home. I know that some of my colleagues think I'm either comatose or drug addled or something, because they will walk past my desk and they'll see me with my eyes closed and they'll see me deep breathing. And what I'm doing at that point is I've just had a horrible conversation, or I've just heard something that really struck a chord within me. And I need to meditate just for a few minutes. And that deep breathing and silencing of my internal dialogue, that for me, 5 minutes worth, and I can move on to the next call right away. And that's part of the reason that we're here in front of you today, and the next big part of the practice that we want to bring in front of you today. We want to talk with you about a meditation technique, a stress reduction technique. And we're going to bring that in front of you in just a few minutes. Why is it that we want you to pick up these techniques from us? Why is it that we're worried about healthier ways of coping? Well, not only in our clients, but in ourselves. We need to build resilience. So why is it that a victim advocate is talking to other victim advocates about building resilience in themselves, not just in clients? I'm a selfish man. I am. When I have a good colleague, when I have a colleague who cares about the work, cares about the client, and knows how to do the work, I'm selfish as hell. I want them to be my colleague forever because they're good for the client, and that's my bottom line. And so I want you, as my colleagues, to last in this industry as long as possible, as long as you want to. We build resilience within ourselves for that very purpose, to make sure that you're here for your client in the same way that you're here for your family and the people you love. So what I want you to know about resilience. So I started off my career, my educational career at least, as a physics major. I was just talking about that this morning. I was supposed to be an engineer. And I can still remember my first physics class ever. We actually talked about, at some point during that semester, we were talking about resilience. And I can just remember that it's the ability to absorb or avoid damage without suffering complete failure. The ability to endure. I can still remember the professor saying, we want you to develop that ability to endure, not only in yourself, but in your clients. And one of the techniques that we're going to bring before you today to talk about that, besides mindfulness, is progressive muscle relaxation. Karen, can you speak a little bit about that, please?
I can, and I apologize. Apparently, the slideshow wanted to go to the very end, and I'm just going to stop it at this slide because this is.
Thank you for being resilient.
I know I got click happy or something.
Atta girl.
Yes, I will talk a little bit about progressive muscle relaxation. So really, it's a method to help you relieve tension. You know, when we're stressed, we tend to tense up. Our body tenses up, our muscles tense up, and it's a way to just relax, to focus on your breathing, to really, as JR says, be mindful of the breaths that you take, and to slow down your breathing. I think we all know that sometimes when we get stressed, we tend to breathe very heavily. Then we notice other things. Our head starts to hurt. Our muscles start to tense. Our heart starts to race. All the normal symptoms of anxiety, really. And progressive muscle relaxation can really help with that. So the benefits, first and foremost, it helps reduce anxiety and tension. And it's not anything magical. You don't have to go and pay somebody to do this. This is something that you can do, as JR said. Oftentimes we walk by his desk and he'll be sitting with his eyes closed. If just for a couple minutes to ground himself, to kind of slow his breathing down, to regulate his heart rate, and to bring him back so that he can move on to the next client and he can be fully present with that client.
Just for the record, it's a lot different than me having my eyes closed during a staff meeting, which is usually not trying to avoid stress at all. Just kidding, Karen.
Oh my goodness, JR. Yes. But really, just learning to slow yourself down and focus on your breaths and focus on your body, it can help improve sleep. It can help improve neck pain and tenseness in your jaw. I know sometimes when we get really stressed, we tend to grind our teeth. We tend to really kind of grind our jaw in, which helps, that muscle gets very, very sore very, very quickly. I have a bad back, so sometimes when I'm stressed, I feel it in my lower back. I have all the muscles around my lower back tend to tense up. That's where I generally feel my stress. It can help with that. It can help with your blood pressure if you're noticing that your blood pressure is sky high. And generally, if your heart's racing and you're having trouble breathing, generally probably your blood pressure is up. And it can also help decrease the frequency of headaches and even migraine headaches. And again, this is something that you can do really anywhere. I have done this in my car. I have done, obviously not while I'm driving, but when I'm pulled over. I've done this in the office. I've done this at home. I coach soccer, and sometimes if I'm on the field and I'm having one of those moments, I just close my eyes for a second and say, all right, I got to bring myself down, because if not, I'm going to, freak out here, and that's not good for anybody. So there's so many benefits behind this, but I think the best thing about it is it's easy to do. And that's what we want to give you, easy, quick things to do. We all don't have an hour every day, sometimes at work, to be able to do certain things. So this is something quick and easy that can help just bring you down so you can function the rest of the day. And JR is going to take us through a guided exercise using progressive muscle relaxation.
Okay, thank you, Karen. We're gonna this is a lot shorter than it has to be, simply because of our time constraints here. I want you to understand that when it comes to progressive muscle relaxation, if you just Google search or Bing search progressive muscle relaxation or PMR, you're going to find scripts all over the place. Do you need one? Maybe in the beginning, but certainly once you become more in tune with your body and you understand the muscle groups a little better, this is something you can do on your own without any other equipment. Now, best way to do it, and none of us are going to be able to do that today probably, but the best way to practice this is laying down. If you're able to lay down while you're doing this, this is absolutely perfect. And it's one of the reasons that I love doing progressive muscle relaxation right before bed. But I do it all the time at my desk. I just focus on different muscle groups, and you'll see what I'm talking about in just a minute. So progressive muscle relaxation takes advantage of the feeling that comes from relaxing your muscles. We all know what tension feels like in the muscles. It feels like a rubber band's been stretched too tight. You can always tell when you're tense, because if somebody's massaging your shoulders, particularly a trained professional masseuse, they'll tell you, ooh, a lot of tension up here. They can actually feel the stress that's being stored in your muscles. So one of the things that progressive muscle relaxation does is it puts you more in touch with those muscles so you can relieve that tension. The way I learned about this the first time, I was an athlete, college athlete, and we didn't even know what a sports psychologist was, but we had one. And one of the things they wanted us to do was to be more in tune with our bodies. And so they taught us progressive muscle relaxation because they found that we learned better when we were relaxed. They also found that we were able to lift more effectively afterwards because we were better in tune with our muscles and we had a better understanding of them. So what I want you to do is get comfortable. If you're able to lay, great. If not, yeah, that's okay too. If you have the ability to turn the lights down, please do so. If you can't, that's okay too. Get comfortable, and I want you to start breathing, and I want you to be very conscious and controlled with your breathing. You're in control. Your breath is not. So a nice big deep breath in through your nose and hold. Again, you're in control. After you hold for a moment, fast exhale in through your nose. On your next inhale, I want you to take the toes of both feet and I want you to scrunch them up. I want you to tighten every muscle in them. Now be careful. Don't give yourself a cramp. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Tense. Hold. When you exhale, instantly release the tension on the muscle. 1, 2, 3. Release. On your next inhale, tense your foot again. Your both feet. Ready? Inhale. And release and exhale. Next, I want you to think about the muscles that run up the back of your leg, your calves, your Achilles tendon. On our next inhale, you're going to ball those. You're going to tighten those as much as you can. Again, be wary of giving yourself a cramp. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Inhale. And release and exhale. Inhale and tense. And exhale. Next, we move up to the knees and the muscles surrounding the knees, the quadriceps. Inhale, tense. And release and exhale. Inhale, tense. Release. Ladies and gentlemen, if you had the time, if we had the time, we would continue this through the major muscle groups, up through the stomach, through the chest, the neck, the shoulders, and out the arms and hands. And then I like to end with the face and the head, because it seems to me like when we tense those muscles in our face and release them, you can feel the tension melt away. When you tense your face, it looks really ugly. So make sure that you're not with people who you care about what they think of you, because you don't want to not do this the correct way simply because you're self-conscious about looking like a caveman who's growling at a dinosaur when you tense up your face. After you finish with the last muscle group in your face, just continue taking the deep breaths for a few more moments. And shake everything loose and walk away and enjoy the rest of your day. Now, the way that I apply this with clients who are either prepping for the stand or coming off the stand is real simple. We can't lay down and we can't turn the lights off and go through a million steps, and sometimes we don't even have 20 minutes or a half hour. Sometimes I have 5. So little things. Here's a great example. You take your hands and you link them and you just pull. Inhale and pull apart. And then exhale and release. That one, that little one right there, not only does it take care of the hands and forearms, but your shoulders too. And that one can actually, in 5 minutes or less, can really relieve tension and stress from a client who needs it, or from a coworker who needs it, or from you. So ladies and gentlemen, the script that I use today, I have adapted from one that is published by the University of Michigan's Health Center. I bring that before you today. I know a lot of people in this area are Penn State fans. I'm not bringing it before you to make you boo at me because I brought up Michigan. I brought it up because I want you to understand that this is important enough that major programs across the country employ this with their athletes to try to help alleviate the pressures of being not only a college athlete, but being a college student and human being. So ladies and gentlemen, I really want to encourage you to practice this, not only by yourself, but with colleagues, with family members, with clients. The more you practice it, the better you get at it.
And thank you. Thank you for being with us today. And if you take nothing else, know that in order to do the hard work that we do, we have to take care of ourselves. And you have to find ways to take care of yourselves. We can't just talk the talk and talk about self-care to others and not do it with ourselves. We're better advocates when we do. We're better humans when we do.
Thanks for your time today. I'm very grateful you were here, and I'm very grateful for the work that you do each and every day with your clients. Please take good care of yourselves and each other so that you can continue to do it.
Absolutely.